And let's bring our guests into this discussion. We have Anders Aslund, a professor at Georgetown University and senior fellow at Atlantic Council, who's in Florida. But we start with Susan Sullivan, a professor of law and politics at Temple University. She joins us now live from Philadelphia. Susan, welcome and thanks for being with us. What can we expect from Trump's first Congress address, coming off the back, as it does, of a month of a dizzying succession of executive orders?
Well, it has been dizzying. It's been very difficult to actually keep track of things. People have been saying just pick one issue and focus on that issue because there's so much going on. But, this speech comes at a time when we've got an administration that is dramatically trying to reshape the federal government by expanding the powers of the president. And, the American Constitution sets up the government in such a way so that there are balances. There are what we refer to as checks and balances between what the president can do and what the legislature can do. And what Trump has been doing and what we can expect him to talk about in this speech is essentially pushing back that barrier, changing the dynamics of the American Constitution, which has endured for almost 250 years. So what is he going to talk about? He's going to talk about what he sees as his accomplishments. And I would imagine there's going to be some classic hyperbole there. But yes, he's not going to be talking about things that people are concerned about, things that people are worried about, things that people are anxious about, without giving a tremendous amount of reassurance, much of which may in fact be fabricated. One never knows with Mr. Trump if there's going to be how much showmanship there will be when he gives these speeches. So we're looking at things like First Amendment rights free speech rights are being affected, civil rights are being affected, economic rights are being affected. Perhaps at the core of this is with this reshaping of the federal government, tens of thousands of people are losing their jobs, being laid off, and then being recalled, being asked to justify their positions or explain their accomplishments. There's been tremendous confusion around this, this interference with the federal government, with the legislative branch. That, coupled with the placement of people in power in various departments and agencies who are arguably not qualified, together with this overarching engineering by what we see is happening with Elon Musk and his Doge. So we're hearing questions about oligarchies and there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anxiety. That is not something that Mr. Trump is going to address tomorrow. He's going to be reassuring and he's going to be claiming success in all of these areas.
Anders, I'm going to go to you. What do you think? Do you have anything to say in response to anything that Susan's just said there in terms of what we are going to see in this speech and what Trump is going to say in terms of setting his agenda for the next 4 years?
I think actually that Professor Sullivan summed up very sensibly what we are to expect. I think that the big thing will be more power. He will complain about what he does not have power to do. He will surprise us. He always does. That's his favorite game. And I think that he will focus on the destruction of the administrative state, as Stephen Bannon has called us, and which is now Elon Musk's main preoccupation. And then he will tell us how badly he has been treated and how these people should be subject to all kinds of punishments. I don't think there will be much on foreign policy. And the foreign policy I would expect, it's a tax on allies. And the obvious cases are Canada and Mexico. They are supposed to get 25% tariffs tomorrow, as you just mentioned. And Ukraine, where he clearly wants to show indirectly that he stands with Putin and Russia, but he doesn't want to say it straightforwardly. Instead, he wants to say how terrible Ukraine is and how badly they are doing in the war. So these are my general expectations.
And we've also seen that the Democrats are going to bring along fired federal workers to Trump's address. Obviously, those people are collateral of the first month of Trump's time in office. How do you think that's going to go down?
I think there are two parts of that. I think we have to look beyond the tens of thousands of people whose lives have been impacted by this to the agencies for whom they work, which are being decimated. And when you take out those thousands of people from agencies that are tasked with looking after the environment, looking after consumer protection, and a whole range of briefs, some of the most vulnerable people are being impacted by this. We know about USAID being suspended. We know about Medicaid, which is an internal domestic program for the most vulnerable. I do think he is going to address foreign policy. I do think he's concerned now because I think there was a lot of hope in the United States and perhaps elsewhere that we saw him cozying up to Putin. We saw him calling Zelensky a dictator and then backpedaling on that. We saw what was happening with the UN resolution. But then President Macron came in, and then Keir Starmer came in. They were both in Washington, and they seemed to kind of be setting the way for some sort of positive discussion. And then Zelensky came in, and of course, that whole thing just descended into this appalling situation that we all saw with President Zelensky being treated so abominably. But I do think what's interesting, though, and if there is something good that has come of that, is that it really lit a fire under Keir Starmer. On the phone to Macron, calling a summit, getting the coalition of the willing together. So I think the one good thing that has come from this is I think Europeans are now going to be the people putting together the plan with Zelensky, bringing it to the United States. So we've essentially taken Mr. Trump out of the negotiation process, but still allowed him to have the glory, so to speak, because he will have the ability to weigh in on this. So I do think, much as I deplore what I saw on Friday, as we all do, that there is some hope there. I'm very impressed with what I've seen of Keir Starmer. No matter what you think of him, he's been very impressive. He's been very stoic, and if you saw Question Time this morning, to see the British Parliament in such unison was quite extraordinary. So that is that might be a bit of a reach, but that is the silver lining that I'm taking from Friday evening's dreadful episode.
What do you think, Anders, and what do you think it's going to take to get Donald Trump on board with what Keir Starmer is proposing? All of the language that we've seen continues to indicate that he wants more from Zelensky and he's not satisfied with what's being proposed yet.
Yeah, I just listened to what Professor Sullivan said, and I saw the opposite line, that Trump was very upset that there was an anti-Trump meeting in London, as it was labeled somewhere in the right-wing press. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, this is actually, as we discussed, one of the open issues. How will he deal with foreign policy? I suspect that Trump will take the opportunity and alienate himself further from Ukraine, Europe, the West, Canada, and NATO. So this might become a big point, or he might leave it aside. This is really one of the big things that I would like to ask for. On the domestic side, the federal workers, the Democrats cannot make a point about it because they don't. This is basically a State of the Union address, even if it's not formally such an address. They can't make much noise about it. The only person I've heard who will boycott it is Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut, who's sharply critical of Trump and talks about this as a coup. And otherwise, it seems that the Democrats will be there and be quiet, but probably somebody will make a noise. This is a wonderful opportunity for the odd congressman to stand up and shout and make a scandal. The Republicans have been very good at it recently. Perhaps some the Democrats can do it now, we don't know. But this is something that might become a big point. But what I'm really worried about is that this will be an anti-European speech.
That is all we have time for. Anders Aslund, a professor at Georgetown University and senior fellow at Atlantic Council, and Susan Sullivan, professor of law and politics at Temple University. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.